All right, welcome back to the PCC podcast. And today we're doing a fun one. We've got all the coaches here, and I'm super excited because y'all came up with this topic. And I think it's a really good one to help people understand, how they can really dial in on their goals and not have to worry about falling into old patterns, because that's something that I think I know I struggled with when I was like a teenager. I'm not sure if you guys also had kind of the same backstory, like female athlete triad, not eating, over exercising, stuff like that. But we're going to be talking about the difference between discipline and disordered eating. So let's start with this because I'm genuinely just curious, like how it came up. Like, what made you decide to pitch the topic, Alyssa? Because you originally came up with this.
Yeah, so I it was really sparked by a question I got from a client, and I've gotten in the past where she said the question specifically was, could we do higher calories on the weekends and lower calories for a calorie goal on weekdays? And she said, could we do that, or would that be disordered? And I thought that was interesting because it's a great structure I've had many people do. And I was like, that's interesting. She would ask if it's disordered because that's targeting like the action itself. And that's why it really sparked this idea where I think so many people say, is this disordered? Or they have these ideas and it's like, well, and they blame one thing or the other. So how do you know? Is it disordered or is it actually just good structure and discipline?
Yeah. That I did not know that that was the like sparking question. That is a really interesting question. Did you ever get like into the weeds of like why she thought that about that specifically?
I cannot remember exactly, but I don't think I asked her specifically why she thought that was disorder because I think most people, it's because they saw it at some point online, truthfully. I don't know if there's much of a different answer than that based on today's technology, but that's my assumption.
Yeah. Why don't we start there then? Because that was one of our like five main buckets to talk about, like how social media tends to paint this picture. So, like, what do you guys see about like, oh, that's disordered eating, or this is healthy, this is not, this is toxic, this is not, that like has really made this a confusing topic for people?
Yeah, I feel like that's such a good question because social media, I mean, so many of us spend so much time daily, weekly on social media. But I think the biggest thing to remember is social media is short content, a lot of times less than 30 seconds or less than 90 at least, right? Like, and it's typically extremes. A lot of the times it is catchy things trying to bring you in and rile you up a little bit. So it is going to be controversial things that maybe aren't true all the time. So believing everything you see on social media is doing yourself a disservice, right? So I think that's first and foremost how so many people get to this point of, oh my goodness, like, is this disordered? Because you're believing everything you're reading online or seeing online. And stopping that right there will help a lot in the first place. But Alyssa, I'd love your thoughts too.
Yeah, I think same thing, Rachel, with social media because and I can speak from experience as a content creator, the purpose of short form content, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube shorts, you only get such a short period of time and people's attention spans are so short. So as a content creator, the goal is to be as controversial, catch your eye, right? Like the headline. So with that, and also as a content creator though, that's how we get people to watch content. So it's not like a bad thing, but otherwise you're going to skip our content, not see what we have to say. And we also have to consider that there's always ifs or buts and different caveats with everything that we post because we can't say, here's a long list of exceptions to this thing I'm saying. No one's going to read that and no one has time for all that. But, just because you see a statement or a claim doesn't necessarily mean that it's gospel, essentially. There's usually more to it than that. And short form content, you're speaking to a specific type of person. It may or may not be you, the one watching it. So just understanding that's how short form content works. Some people make claims that are not great, but at the end of the day, that's what keeps attention. And that's why we can't use that as the explanation for everything. We have to dig deeper. when you see something on social media.
Yeah, I love the example that you just gave there of like there can be a good message that someone like with good intentions is posting, right? Because not all social media is malicious, and I would honestly be willing to argue that like a lot of social media has really good intentions. But like the classic one that comes to mind is like the battle between, and this is very like on topic, intuitive eating versus tracking your food. And it's like for one person who like actually has an eating disorder, like learning intuitive eating practices, like actual intuitive eating practices could be so good for them to like learn how to tune into their body and stop obsessing over numbers. But for another person who, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of America is overweight, unhealthy, and intuitively wants fast food and chocolate. Like they are also consuming this content, which is a beautiful message, but it's for them in a much more evolved version of themselves. Like they will have to, we talk about this all the time, right? Like you can't intuitively eat unless you really have structure and know what your body needs. So it's like that person who's watching it needs to first go through a period of tracking their food, understanding what that looks like in order to appropriately intuitively eat and experience the freedom that this content creator is trying to paint. And so like that what you just said, Alyssa, like this one message can be really good for one person, really bad for another, and being able to sit and ask yourself and reflect with self-awareness, is this message for me right now, I think is an important skill to have. Yeah. There was one post, I'm curious for you guys' thoughts on this. This was actually like a great post, like I loved it. I plan to make something similar soon. It was like, this is how you pour rice into a bowl. And the girl just pours rice into a bowl. And then she says, this is how you track pouring rice into a bowl. And she just like slides a food scale under it and then pours the rice into the bowl again. She goes, what's so hard about that? I don't understand. Like somebody explain to me. And then the comment section is freaking wild. It's like, tracking food is disordered eating, you have an eating disorder, for literally like again just weighing your food. And so it makes me think of like it's not just the content creators as well. I think it's a lot of times the people who have had bad experiences with these things projecting their reality in the comments. So I'm curious you guys' thoughts on that.
Alyssa, your face is saying a lot right now. But yeah, I mean, I would first and foremost just say, tell me you're triggered without telling me you're triggered. I'm like, come on. Yeah, I'm like, sorry. But no, exactly. I'm like, at the end of the day, this is pulling something internal out. And maybe this is a moment where we should reflect instead of immediately putting that thought out into the world. Because is it really that deep? Is someone tracking their rice really impacting you that deeply? And if it is, again, triggered, maybe this is some inner work, some therapy is necessary here.
I think comment sections are fun. And that's where, whether, like Marissa said, most social media has good intentions and good messages behind it. But pretty much every post, whether you agree or disagree, go to the comments, you're going to see happy and upset people. Unless some people delete their comments, just be aware of that. There's been plenty of people that do that. But, there's always going to be disagreements and everything. And I think too that even if it is a good intention, there's going to be people that are, like Rachel said, might get triggered and then completely attack the person when really they should probably be curious and look internally as to why they are having that reaction, feeling that way about the post. But I think for you listening, whenever you see social media posts or something feels wrong to you or makes you angry like that, I think a good rule of thumb, this coming from my mindset coaching, always revert to curiosity on things. If you feel anger, oh, why do I feel anger? Like, where is that coming from? Is there something in me that's thinking this post or this message is bad? And why do I think that way? So that's my take on that. People in the comments.
Love it. Cool. Well, let's answer the actual question. What is the difference between discipline and disordered eating? Like, where do you guys think that line actually is?
Personally believe, I think this is where I started. It's about the intention. And I believe this is also in how they categorize mental disorders, is if it is positively or negatively impacting your mental health and life. So if you're tracking food and it's helping you lose weight, which makes you feel good, there's no disorder about that, as long as you're going into it the right mindset of, I need to make sure I'm getting enough protein, carbs, and fats in my diet so that I can fuel my workouts, fuel my body. I don't want to undereat these nutrients. So I would say it's the intention, and then whether or not it improves or negatively impacts your life is where you find that line.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's all about the intention. And I think really thinking about it and having even clients reflect on, have you ever truly tracked your food and noticed, the habits, the patterns you're seeing there, and been super intentional and been crushing your nutrition goals and been like, wow, I feel so much worse about myself now? And I would almost guarantee you the answer is no, because when you are aware and you're creating these habits and skills surrounding nutrition and just proving yourself that you're able to show up for yourself and creating that trust within yourself, oftentimes you're going to only continue to feel better and see positive change in your life. So yeah, that being said, it's kind of like the question there is usually the answer. And I think that we work with a lot of people who are so self aware. And a lot of the people who are so self aware oftentimes find themselves questioning, is this disordered? Because you get in that thought spiral of, well, like, I like this and it makes me feel good, but like, I saw somewhere that this was disordered. So, like, should I go down that rabbit hole? And again, 90% of the time, if you're having to ask yourself the question, is this disordered? It's likely not, because your intention behind it is not disordered. It is to better yourself. And yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a big through line, which I think just like speaks to our generation, is like I would be willing to say most women who are in like the late Gen Z, early millennial, even late, especially late millennial too, just we all had some shit with food and our bodies growing up. Like if you didn't, you are like a very lucky snowflake. But most of us were inundated with that kind of diet culture. And so some level of like unhelpful thinking patterns probably surfaced in like early to late teens, young adulthood, crash dieting, yo-yo dieting, over restriction, over exercise, something like that. And I think a lot of times the situation that I see is like that's the experience that people will reference, is like, I really want to get in shape, but I just don't want to do that again. And like they are like 35, 40 years old, and they're like they're so much more evolved as a person. They've matured so much, and it's like it's a valid concern, but at the same time it's like they are so far beyond even being able to slip down that rabbit hole for the most part. Again, with the self-aware type of people that we work with, like they're just asking themselves these questions so much more often. Like they've been through therapy. They obviously have had to have some level of self-awareness, reflection, and growth to get to where they are in life. That like whenever I'm on like a consult with someone and they say that, it's like I'm not going to dismiss it. Obviously, like we're going to make sure that that concern is heard and that you don't go down that route, because there are coaches that I'm sure could push someone more in that direction than we would. But it's almost like the fact that you're even like mentioning it is like pretty much the sure sign that it's not going to happen, because like we're just going to keep an eye on what this relationship with data and numbers and like structure looks like. So what is that? I guess let's do this. What are some examples of a healthy relationship with structure? And like something I was thinking about as we were talking through this is like maybe even just talk through some like client examples of like where somebody maybe was kind of exhibiting the old way of thinking when it comes to structure, nutrition, whatever, and like how you reframed that to make that a more healthy relationship with structure for that person.
I think off the top of my head, this is like a big bulk of clients I've worked with. Many of my clients over the years have thought that tracking and weighing food was restrictive or quote unquote disordered, even. And when we dig into it, it's because they have the mindset of, If I track and weigh my food, I am restricting myself. It means I cannot have XYZ. I cannot have ABC. I said, okay, well, what I'm seeing is it's that mindset. It's not the tracking, but you're going at it with, okay, I, can't eat this chocolate that I'm craving today. I can't eat the popcorn. And I always reframe this with my clients. Usually the first week, most of my clients and I have this discussion. I said, okay, well, what if instead we think about it as you're tracking away your food because you're trying to eat enough of the good nutrients. You don't want to undereat the nutrients for your body. You want to fuel your body and be nice to it. We want to give your body the fuel it needs. You're not going to fill your car with the wrong type of gas. It's going to break down and you're not going to be able to drive it. You got to get the right type of gas in there to make sure it runs properly. You feel good. You have energy. You can actually build muscle because if you want those training sessions to pay off, you got to get the right nutrients in. So if we reframe it, it's the same action, different mindset, and now it's working you towards your goals and doing you a favor.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a great example. And something that kind of brought up for me is like because I think the original question kind of stemmed off of like what a healthy relationship with structure looks like. Am I correct? Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, for me, what that looks like is knowing that if you miss a workout, if you at dinner, you went 100 calories over your calorie goal for the day, you ate dessert and you didn't feel guilty. Like you can do these things without spiraling into that all or nothing mindset that so many clients come in with and kind of locked into that perfectionist all or nothing thinking. And you can move on to the next thing, right? Like, oh man, something came up and I missed the gym today, but that doesn't mean my entire week is ruined. That doesn't mean that I'm going to skip for the entire week. I went over on my calories. That doesn't mean that I'm going to continue overeating and that I'm going to, make up for it in some other way. It means that tomorrow's a new day and we move on, right? It's kind of really understanding that structure is meant to help give you a framework for the day and build on your success, but not make you feel like you are locked into a jail cell. And if you do something out of it, you're screwed, right? So, yeah.
I think off the back of that, I was trying to like think of what example I wanted to use because I have a couple, but one that you made me think of like structure is to help like put guardrails in place. I love the idea of guardrails and just that word because it makes you think of like bowling where the guardrails keep you from like just going straight into the gutter, right? And one reframe that's been particularly helpful for a lot of clients is literally just looking at their calorie goal as a target rather than a maximum. Like, as simple as the whole time they're just thinking, I need to eat as little as possible and I can't get above this target versus I set someone's calories at about 2000 this past week and I was like, right now you're averaging like 1500 on a good day. Like, and I want to see you between 1900 and 2100 every single day. So this is actually going to be, even though in the past you thought the tracking was, really restrictive and negative, like this is going to force you to buff up your meals, have more protein, fiber, maybe even some fun foods in there. And it's going to force you to eat more every single day. And that person was like, yeah, I've never used tracking like that before. And so, like, just the idea of like, these are the things you want to stay within rather than just be under this. I think that has been a big shift for a lot of people.
I had a talk with a client today, actually. We're only like in our second week together. I've started to notice that mindset in her, and I had to call it out because I set her a calorie goal and she said, well, I'm feeling like less hungry on some days. Can I eat less? And I said, no. I said, this is not a maximum. The goal is to eat as much as possible, not how far under this line can I be. It's, you know, how can I eat the most amount possible while losing body fat? Because for me as a coach, minimal effective dose, not here's the maximum, everything below that is the target. It's no, you're in this range. It's usually I give clients like a 100-calorie range, like between 16 and 1800, for example, instead of just one number. I'm like, no, you need to be within this range. If you're under, you're off plan. Like, it's not a maximum, like Marissa said. I like that example.
Yeah. At the same time, I also like feel the need to also play the other side of the coin, which is like I had a client tell me yesterday that something that I said in her check-in, I basically said like, yeah, you're gonna be dieting, like you're gonna have to restrict some stuff, like you're gonna have to say no, like that's just part of it. And she was like, something just clicked when you said that because of all of this messaging of like, you can eat whatever you want, you can have dessert every day, which I believe you can have dessert every day. But what that dessert looks like in a dieting phase compared to at maintenance, two very different desserts, right? And so I think like just the balance between like grit and grace, I love this the words there that I've seen some people use, because what Rachel was saying about like if you go over your calories, you miss a workout, like everything you said is 100% true in the right context. Because if you miss a workout but you're always missing workouts, like too much grace, need more grit, need more structure. And I think a healthy relationship with structure is also understanding that it will be hard and it will challenge you and it will actually raise the standard that you live by. Like it's going to force you to make choices that you otherwise wouldn't, that are uncomfortable. And I think recognizing the difference between like healthy discomfort because you're growing versus like rumination, dwelling, spiraling, like those negative discomfort patterns, like there's going to be discomfort either way. So I think just being really real in the fact that like there's no reality in which like it's just easy. Like there's two different kinds of hard and you have to pick the one that actually helps you grow.
Yeah, that's huge. I love what you said about the social media, and it made me think about the coaches who post like everyone should be able to eat 21 to 2200 calories and be in a deficit. Like everyone's bodies can do that. And if you're being told otherwise, it's not true. You're with the wrong coach. I'm like, biggest eye roll of all time. Everyone's body, everyone's metabolism, everyone's past history is so different and plays into this. I mean, that's a whole other tangent we could go down, and we don't have to do that today. But exactly similar to what you were saying. At the end of the day, yeah, just not believing everything you see on social media. A lot of this is just hooking you in. But yeah, I think that was one that just brought up, and I had to bring that one up.
That gave me a thought too. I would say, and I'm guilty of this as well, the stuff that you agree with on social media, because like Marissa said, you're gonna have to restrict some things if you want to lose body fat. Like otherwise, I mean, look at the state of our country, right? The fact that matter is too, I think that those types of coaches, and I'll be honest, at one point in time, I started sliding into that side as a coach because people liked it. But I look back on that time and realize that's what people want to hear. It's not what they should do. People dig that up and then they'll start following those coaches saying you can eat whatever you want. You should be eating 3,000 calories a day and be this unicorn who loses weight on 3,000 calories and reverse dieting. And it's because you want that to be the reality. Confirmation bias. You're looking for what you want rather than what's reality. So, like Marissa said, you should be able to eat some dessert every single day. It's what it looks like. But again, if you're only agreeing with content because you want it to be true, that's a really big thing to question as well.
That's a great point. Yeah, I've also definitely been there as well. Like, oh, if you have anything less than 1,500 calories, like go fire your coach. It's like, I'm sorry, if you are 4'11" and like 110 pounds trying to lose body fat, you might have to dig. Like, sorry, that sucks. You have a smaller body and it requires less energy to live.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. Well, what other any other thoughts or examples or stories that you guys have about the difference between discipline and disordered eating that you want to share?
I just have a lot I could say because especially as someone who competes in bodybuilding, where that's a big topic of people saying bodybuilding ruined my life, bodybuilding's a disordered sport. Same thing. It's not the sport, it's the way you go about it and your mindset and intentions behind it. So I could go on about that all day. But I would say, bottom line, it's the intention and does it improve your life or is it literally making your life and anxiety worse at the end of the day? So don't blame the action, blame the mindset behind it.
Well, and it's hard for people to take responsibility over that because it's their own mindset. And I think in bodybuilding, I know all three of us have been down that road. Like, I feel like I've seen it a lot of times be because people are attaching their worth to how successful they are with their prep or their results. And it's same problem dressed up in different clothing. It's hyper fixation on the outcome rather than the process, a fixation on the tangible result rather than the person that they're becoming in the process, like things like that. Is that kind of what you see?
Yeah, I think because with bodybuilding too, those of you listening, I don't, that's why I'm very careful to talk about. I don't really talk much about the protocols I'm following on social media because I have a different kind of goal. I can do it without it being disordered, but protocols get extreme compared to what you'd hear for like a lifestyle client. And that's also why I don't talk about it because I'm like, hey, I would never program this for someone as a lifestyle client. Like if you're deep in a prep 2 weeks out like me, that's different. But it's, yeah, it really is person and mindset dependent, like you said. So bodybuilding, I see those things all the time, especially, but that's my thought on that.
Yeah. Some of my favorite like people to follow are people who just like are lifelong bodybuilders and like when it's prep time versus like a different season. Like I'm just thinking of like Eric Helms because I listen to his podcast, Mass, all of that. It's like he's the same person no matter what the season is, no matter if he's prepping, he's in regular life. But for some reason he's always talking about like eating raw carrots as a snack and like that's just him. And there's no emotion behind it. It's just like, yep, this is just what I'm eating for this season. And I think that's really cool. Like when you can just detach emotion from how many calories you're eating or like how hard you're working at something, like just being able to put in the work and not put a lot of excess thought behind it. So I feel like that's also maybe a good example of a healthy relationship with structure.
Couldn't agree more. I'm glad you brought up the bodybuilding side of things. I think that's, since we've all three been down that, I'm like, I think it's important. And I think that people do get curious about that. And I think at the end of the day, if you are considering bodybuilding and you are very stressed out about whether you are disordered eating or not, you're probably not in a phase where you should be going down the rabbit hole of bodybuilding at all. So wanted to put
Very,
that out there too.
very
Yeah.
true. That's so true. I think I forgot to say one more thing too. Sorry. With this, I think it's also because it goes back to like how I originally came up with the topic, but also, and like Marissa was saying, if you're 4'11", like 1,200 calories, like is not like bad for you, right? I would say like with calorie amounts, because I also had a client say like, oh well, I was eating this much and she's not losing weight right now, and I'm like, well, people also say online 1,200 calories is bad. I'm like, but what if I used to work with a girl who was 4'8"? She was eating a lot less than that because her maintenance was maybe 1,500. She was you know, she was literally a, what is it, a midget dwarf, but she was classified as that, right? Like I'm like, well, if you want to lose weight, we have to. There's no other way around it. It's not about, oh, 1,200 calories is too low, it's bad. Well, it depends on the person, right? So I think that's
Yeah.
another thing too, is don't just see a number and think, oh, I can't eat that, that's too low. Well, it depends on the person, not, it's not just number dependent. So
Yeah. And that's what gets really interesting too, is like the subjective experience of that amount of calories for one person versus another. Because obviously, if I ate 800 calories in a day, I would be so upset. I would be so hangry. But I also like have had comparisons with like friends in bodybuilding and lifestyle and coaches where like I'm not on the high end of all this metabolically. Like I have to dig to get lean. I'll always have. I'm going to work on that in the next gaining season and reverse diet. But historically, it's just not, I'm not your maintain on 2,700 calories girl. Like, and I've seen people my height, my weight be able to do that. And that's what's also like when you really go down the rabbit hole of actual research and how that works, there are so many factors that play into why does one person burn more energy than another. And it literally can come down to DNA, genetics, a lot of environment, of course, how lifestyle, etc., but a lot of stuff that like isn't in our control, like just truly programmed into our DNA. So I think it's important to always ask yourself, what is the subjective experience that I'm having with this calorie amount, rather than like, what did this influencer say is a good amount for me to eat? What did this macro calculator say is a good amount for me to eat?
Yeah, nailed it.
Cool. Well, this is a fun one. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I think the biggest thing is just, structure is healthy because it is serving you, but it can become problematic and, not as healthy when you are serving it and your purpose is that. So, kind of just thinking on that a little bit. And I think, just like Alyssa said earlier, reflecting on how you're feeling and how you may be triggered on some of the things you're seeing online and going internal with that versus immediately getting triggered and allowing that to, spiral elsewhere.
Yeah. At the end of the day, who's in the driver's seat? If it's not you, it's time to do some work on that.
Yep.
Cool.
I agree more.
Awesome, y'all. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hope you learned something. Feel free to reach out to any of us on social media to let us know your takeaways, and we'll see you back here for the next episode.